Beautifully said. And one thing that really stood out to me is the fact that the food we're putting into our body now is going to affect the future generations. So that's one thing that I always try to think is, how are my actions impacting the future generations? Am I, by taking this, doing this action, am I making my grandkids' life better, or am I making it more difficult for them? And one thing that I'd love to have you dive into is, what is the negative effects that will happen for future generations if we continue down this path of no enzymes, that are gone from our food, probiotics demolished from our food? What is going to be the effect of not having enzymes and probiotics? So I can say, as someone who's fairly healthy, by adding masszymes on a regular basis, probably 6, 8 months ago, I noticed an improvement in my digestion, which I thought was pretty good as a healthy individual. So I can only imagine someone who's unhealthy, that's wreaking havoc on their body. So what is the effect in the long term of no probiotics, or few probiotics and few enzymes?
Well, we can actually see and track that already. We already have a trend that's happening. So, there was a guy by the name of Dr. Edward Howell who, back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, started doing experiments on animal species related to enzymatic deficiency in the impact of generations. Now, when you test rats and rabbits and dogs and cats, they have a shorter lifespan than humans.
Right.
And so he would feed some just a regular raw food diet, complete with enzymes and probiotics, some without anything, completely devoid of those things, like cooked food and pasteurized food. And then he would feed some where he would supplement the diet with additional enzymes in the body. Now, here's what he found. The ones that had the regular food in its natural state with the enzymes and probiotics present lived a normal life expectancy. The ones that were deficient, not only did they live not as long, but they also suffered from a variety of complications, which were passed on generationally. And this was the big piece. By the third generation of species, three things had happened. One, the species started to elicit social behavior that was not concordant with how those animals, so anything from the cat would eat its young and all sorts of strange things, or their social behavior, their mobility, their energy was completely different. They weren't as mobile or active or whatever. Two, they started to experience massive amounts of genetic-based diseases, the growth of tumors, dysbiosis in their hormones, deformation in various organs and functions of the body. And the third thing that happened is they lost the ability to procreate.
Wow.
And what Dr. Howden, you can check this all out in his book, Food Enzymes for Health and Longevity, or Enzyme Nutrition. And there's two versions of the food and enzyme. There's a shortened version and then the big, like 1,300 pager where he goes really, really deep. If you're one of those research junkies like I am, went in there. And he predicted that by the time we got to third generation since World War II, we would start to experience strange sociological behavior in the species, a rapid rise in genetic-based diseases, and the inability to procreate. Well, look out what's happening. Genetic-based diseases have exploded. Go on Facebook or Instagram or whatever. There's a lot of strange sociological behavior that we weren't present before. And look at the rise of fertility clinics and how many people are having challenges having kids. When, if you go back to my grandparents' era, it wasn't uncommon to have 10, 12 kids in a family. Today, people can't have one in just a few generations. So it doesn't take a genius or a statistical wizard or a genetics expert to do the math. The math doesn't work. And so people like yourself, myself, and people in our industry who are hip to this are recognizing, there is an assault. And particularly if you look at the birth rates in advanced civilizations on the planet, the most industrialized nations of the world, they're actually dropping so much that they're experiencing negative growth in the population. So all this stuff about there's too many people on the planet, it's a bunch of crap, because the more we industrialize, we know that population decline starts to happen rapidly. But what's interesting, you end up in situations like Japan, which is a nation that is completely dying out. There's not enough people. China's one-child policy is going to have devastating consequences for the country, 30 years from now, because there's so many unmarried men and so few people in the population. They've actually reversed that, but they're not going to get out of that population aspect. So these are fascinating mega trends that are not common and not popular to talk about, because it's very hard to change the production and commercialization and industrialization of what's happening with our food supply, our medical systems, our legal systems, our government systems, which are all embedded and have financial rewards from those machines. And lots of well-meaning people don't have the courage to stand up and say what's going on. So what that leaves us is you and me and a few of us who are saying, hey, wait a second, I'm seeing these trends. What do we need to do in order to survive? Because guess what? 40 years from now, 50 years from now, all the people who are part of that system, they won't be here anymore. And that's a sad thing. But I'm not interested in trying to convince all those people. I've tried that. It's not, I can't go against those machines, but I can talk to the people who say, you know what? I'm going to go the blue-footed booby bird, and I'm going to adapt to these changes, right?